32 teams, 16 games, formatted by Week 17 matchup. This is Episode 5, Detroit at Dallas.
What is up, guys? Welcome to the Edge DFS. My name is Tyson Smith, joined by Ellie Hernandez. Ellie, this is a damn good matchup when it comes to Week 17 matchups to target. They're in the dome. We don't have to worry about weather. In reality, Detroit's defense, yes, they've improved, but they were not good last year. Dallas's defense, on the other hand, top 10. Offense, top 10. So, in theory, this should be a shootout. We'll talk a little bit about kind of like Detroit's additions on defense. Not that it really matters. I'm still going to attack these Dallas stacks as much as possible. But I don't know, man. Like, this has got to be, to me, like one of the games that I'm really like, besides that Kansas City, Cincinnati Bengals stack that everybody loves, I'm getting to a lot of this stack. I have a ton of Dak Prescott. Unfortunately for me, I haven't been able to get to as much Jared Goff as I want. I'm either just not thinking about him, or I can't grab Amon-Ra St. Brown or Jahmyr Gibbs or any of his pass catchers in the earlier rounds. That's what's been kind of difficult for me. So where are you at when it comes to exposures for this matchup for Week 17? And look, not even stack wise. Like you just got to, even if you just get a couple one-offs or a couple 1v1s in this matchup without the quarterbacks, like, I think you got to be exposed to this game, because if you don't have a lot of this game and this game goes off, you're going to be screwed if you make it to that Week 17. So where are you at?
The first thing that I have to say is Amon-Ra St. Brown is one of my favorite players. Sun God, like, he's just one of my favorite guys to target early on in drafts. And I've been getting a lot of those picks 10 through 12. I pretty much get 2 or 10 through 12. So I'm in that range to be making a lot of determinations between CD and Amon-Ra. And let's put it this way, just between if I remove Dak Prescott from it, if I'm just looking from the Dallas wide receivers, I have almost 45% of exposure just to Brandon Cooks, Gallup, and CD, however you want to cut that up combined.
Yeah.
And again, I love stacking just because these are, like, if you told me your fantasy team had Amon-Ra St. Brown, Tony Pollard, and CeeDee Lamb or something like that, just out the gate, like, I'd be like, hey, cool, man, you're gonna have a pretty good season this year. So Week 17 is kind of a bonus in my opinion. So I just have a lot of this game. I have a lot of Goff. I have a lot of Jameson Williams. Amon-Ra St. Brown's probably my highest owned stud at like 15 to 17%. I have a shitload of Sam Laporta, man. I am way exposed to this game. Well, I'm excited to talk about it.
You and I just did a show, was it last night or the day before that? We did a way too early look at the showdown slate for the Chiefs versus Detroit, that game. So we wanted to jump in and do this show right away while Detroit was still on our minds. And, the good news is with Detroit is, like, Sam Laporta, his stock is rising. Like, it seems like he's another viable pass catching option, while Jameson Williams is out for those 6 games. Because if you look at besides the top dudes, besides Amon-Ra St. Brown, who, like, wide receiver wise, without Jameson Williams, there's not a lot of options there. And you're not really seeing these dudes get drafted very high. these other wide receivers. So anyways, Ellie, let's talk about injuries here. Now, I don't think there's a whole lot to talk about. We did get Luke Schoonmaker. You're gonna have to forgive me on the pronunciation of that. I still haven't heard anybody say that. He was activated today off the non-football injury list. He seems to be getting back in the mix, but he's a rookie wide receiver. They drafted him the second round. Like, you're not drafting a second-round tight end. You're not drafting a second-round tight end to just let him sit around all year. So they're going to want to get him involved. They have 2 other dudes right now. This team runs a ton of two tight end sets, even 3 tight end sets. So, we got Jake Ferguson and Peyton Hendershot, which, look, we have a little surprise here. We just got the first depth charts, so we'll talk about that. But back to Schoonmaker. He's been activated. He's getting in practice. Right now, you'll probably start to see his ADP rise a little bit, but he's not listed as one of the starters. Right now, he's a backup. That could change. So what else are you noticing injury-wise? Obviously, Jameson Williams, we mentioned that. He's out for six games. That's not an injury. That's a gambling suspension. I don't really think there's a whole lot else to talk about. You know, Detroit wise and Dallas, knock on wood, right now they're seem relatively healthy fantasy wise, right?
Yeah, I think we're gonna have limited injuries to discuss until after this weekend, week one of preseason actually goes into full effect.
Yeah, so let's talk about some narratives here. Excuse me. Let's talk about narratives. To me, we'll get into this depth chart, but they changed the offensive coordinator on Dallas. Now it was Brian Schottenheimer's there. Kellen Moore's in LA with the Chargers. I don't know how much of a difference we're gonna see. Maybe the offense gets better. Maybe we see a little bit of a difference. But Dallas had a great year last year. They were a top offense, despite everybody loves to talk shit about the Cowboys. They were probably maybe a couple unlucky plays from advancing. So to me, it seems like they're going to continue to do what they do best with this offense. What else jumps out to you here, like narrative-wise? Detroit's defense is getting a little bit better. Not a huge deal, but until I see them actually improve, I'm not super worried about this defensive matchup against Dallas. Who did they get?
So the Lions, they added C.J. Gardner-Johnson, obviously Cam Sutton, and I think Emmanuel Mosley. They made some decent upgrades in the secondary. Again, I think you're starting at ground zero. You're the 31st pass defense in the league. So I don't think it's really shocking to anybody to expect them to improve slightly. And just to kind of like comment back on the other show, right? We're talking about how it impacts the showdown. I don't know that it does. Like this defense hasn't played anything together. And the first the ringer is going to be against Patrick Mahomes and the Super Bowl winners. So that's kind of the point there. Let's see them play a couple games before we just assume that they're not going to be a bottom, the 25% defense. But look, I think that they're going to make changes, but they're going to improve. But that I don't give a shit when it comes to best ball, right? That doesn't impact me. CeeDee Lamb is still CeeDee Lamb. If he's healthy, if he's out there in week 17, like he's one of the top wide receivers in the game. It doesn't matter who's covering him. He has the ability to go out and make a play. And this is probably going to be a pretty high total. If looking at it, I wouldn't see any reason why Vegas wouldn't put a 52.5 point total on this game, right? It's in a dome. I think there's going to be a lot of fun here. So I think one of the things that we got to keep an eye on, you want to pull up the depth chart, because I think one of the most interesting narratives is, you brought this up a little bit, it's just kind of where we're seeing some of these people fall. I think Deuce Vaughn is showing up as what is that, 5A at running back.
Yeah, that's very surprising to me.
Yeah, and then Rico Dowdle being listed as the second one. I don't know if that necessarily worries me too much. I really think Malik Davis is going to end up filling in that number 2 role. It's going to be Tony Pollard, Malik Davis. And that's honestly assuming that the Cowboys aren't able to work something out with Zeke where he comes back on a much cheaper deal, because that's still in play. So like I know we liked Deuce Vaughn a little bit earlier on in training camp. I'm not gonna lie, I probably should have realized that the dude was 5'2". Right? Like that wasn't necessarily something that I was aware of until I saw that video. But looked like an Oompa Loompa running out on the fucking football field. But he got drafted by an NFL team, so we'll see how he plays over the next couple of games, and maybe he makes the team in a punt return, kick return fashion, right? So it's something to keep an eye on. But that was really the only narrative I think I had. Fifth string running back.
Well, we haven't really talked about Brandon Cooks here. To me, he's one of my favorite off-season additions, for any team. Like whenever I see Brandon Cooks in that area, what is he going, 82 overall ish? I'm way over on him, because I usually just scoop him up. I really like him this year. I think he can do great. He's taking over that Cooper role. He's still got some legs on him. He's still a fast dude. He's still a big play guy. And as you can see here, Jake Ferguson and Peyton Hendershot are listed as those 2 tight ends, because they run a ton of 2 tight end sets. And to me, Ferguson is, now that we're seeing kind of how this is all playing out with the tight ends, I know we're spending a little bit more time talking about this, but as a 20th round pick to complete your stacks, you could probably expect like 5+ touchdowns. I'm just guessing here. This is just off the top of my head. Like just by watching all these Cowboy games last year, you could expect like quite a bit of touchdowns from these tight ends. Now, I don't know if it's spread out, if it's going to be concentrated on one guy, but Peyton Hendershot is the dude that has that pass catching upside. Ferguson is the more rounded player. He's going to get more playing time. But I think people are sleeping a little bit on Peyton Hendershot. If you could take him in the 20th round, you can take all these dudes in the 20th round. I think you just get your fair share of each one because we don't really know who is going to go off. Simi Fehoko, some of these dudes like Jalen Tolbert and Kavontae Turpin. Now, Turpin, I'll take as a 20th round dude, just as a flyer if I need a run back for Detroit stacks or if I need like a second or if I'm desperate for like a third pass catcher or something for Dallas. But it's not really worth mentioning. I really think these running backs, like obviously Tony Pollard's going to be the dude, but we've seen in the past, like, I mean, what percentage of snaps is his backup going to get? 20%, 30%? I don't know. And you think Rico Dowdle or Malik Davis is going to be able to fill that role? I just don't know. That's why I really think that Zeke may come back. So if you're, just seeing this depth chart here, I thought potentially Deuce Vaughn could be that guy because all I've seen from Deuce Vaughn is kind of highlights. Like I use that in quotation marks, but I'm seeing on Twitter quite a bit of clips about Deuce Vaughn. Maybe it's just because he's a small mofo and it's kind of funny to watch, but the fact that he's listed as number 5 on the depth chart really worries me because I've got like 15+% of him, which scares me. Now, Ronald Jones, he's got a 2-game suspension for some sort of PED BS that he wasn't aware of was in his body. I don't know how that affects things. Like, he could still practice, but he's not suiting up for those first 2 games. So does Ronald Jones being out make them sign Zeke? I don't know, man. Like, before we move on, what are your thoughts on this running back? Some of these other options at running back. Are you drafting any of these dudes besides Tony Pollard and maybe Deuce Vaughn?
I have a little bit of Deuce Vaughn. I think I'll start opening up to a little bit of Malik Davis, but outside of that, I'm not getting any of these other guys. I'll be real honest. Like, although it's okay to take flyers on these guys, especially if you're maxing the millie, like there's just, I really just think it's kind of weird. There's just so much better value at even in round 20. Like when we get to the Cardinals show, you guys will see how much goddamn Michael Wilson I have. Like some of these guys are just absolutely free and they're not going in drafts and they are going to get significant run compared to, the Rico Dowdle. I think he has total like 15 carries in his career.
Yeah.
And he spent more time on IR than he has on a field.
Now, the last thing to talk about before we get into the breakdown is, Dallas has a really good, solid defense. Like, so to me, like, I'm not just drafting for week 17, obviously, because you have a whole season that you need to get through to get to that final round. But this game, to me, if I had to choose between stacking one of these teams or the other, I'm probably leaning towards Dallas because on paper it seems like maybe a better matchup, but I don't know that it really matters. It's just worth mentioning. All right, let's get into this breakdown. 1 second. Let's do it. Break it down. All right, so earlier on when we were drafting, and this is why from the second that DraftKings opened up their best ball, I've been drafting nonstop and trying to spread it out equally across the whole summer and into training camp and into the preseason. Because look, I ended up getting a lot of CeeDee Lamb and Amon-Ra, but right now getting them together, you have to get lucky. Somebody has to, CeeDee Lamb has to fall. Like if you're in that 12th hole or that 12th pick and CeeDee Lamb and Amon-Ra are there, well, obviously you're going to take both of them. But, you can't reach for CD because then you're not going to be, Amon-Ra is not going to be there. So to me, getting CeeDee Lamb and Amon-Ra St. Brown right now is not nearly as easy as it was earlier in the summer. And even then it was a little bit difficult to get to that. So what are your thoughts on this combo here? It seems like it on paper should be pretty popular, but their ADP is right. Look at that. 11.70, 11.77. You got to get lucky to get these guys.
I haven't had much problem getting CD and Amon-Ra. Like I said, I've been getting a lot of 11, 12 picks into, and I love getting to both these guys. The only difference is like CD Lamb, does have a little bit more of an injury history, so that is concerning to me. So like I think naturally when I draft CD Lamb, I'm a little bit more aggressive on my wide receivers, even more than I am normally. And we've talked about it on other shows. For Amon-Ra St. Brown, one of the things that I think this is going to sound crazy, is suppressing his value a little bit, is how many times he was tackled at the 1 yard line. Like, even if you add 3 more touchdowns, you give him 60% of the 5 touchdowns, the 5 times he was tackled on the 1 yard line. Jamal Williams got those 5 touchdowns. He might be ranked ahead of CD Lamb in every draft. He might, like, there's serious movement that happens on Ross St. Brown. And maybe I'm too committed to that whole shtick, but I really think that Amon-Ra is not going to get tackled at the 1 yard as many times this season. So I think, look, if you can stack these guys, I think you want to. It's not even a bad core to build around for your season-long team. So like these guys, if they stay healthy, are going to be some of the top producers. So I mean, even if you're anti-week 17, close your eyes and have CD Lamb and Amon-Ra on your team. I think you're fine. And, to your point, like early on, I was getting kind of a decent amount of CD and Amon-Ra. So like I thought I needed to be a little bit different. So I have a couple where I went Amon-Ra and Tony Pollard. And I think I only have 1 or 2 where I did that. I didn't necessarily want to reach too much, but that's another kind of stance that I have with Tony Pollard. I think his ADP is going to move up as we get closer to the season starts. Right. If we look at what he did last year with Ezekiel Elliott still being on the team, he crushed, right? Like we all know that he crushed. And like, I still don't understand where we're not, he was still a top 70 ADP last year. And that was with the expected workload of Ezekiel Elliott. And he's going 19. He's only moved up 3 spots over the summer. Like, Nick Chubb, that's a guy that he probably needs to be closer with. Oh, yeah. Tony Pollard could easily be up there with Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb get up to 13 without really getting as much work in the passing game and just, being spoken about in the passing game, right? They're just talking about potentially getting him catches. We know Pollard's going to get involved in the passing game. Yeah. So, like, I don't know, man. I think his ADP is going to move. I don't think it's a reach if you want to take a couple with ASB and Tony Pollard. Now, this is a little long-winded. I don't think that you want to go CD Lamb, Tony Pollard. Again, I don't know how beneficial it is to stack 2 number 1 options in an offense in the first 2 to 5 rounds.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's a good point. Because I was going to bring up, 2 months ago when he was going around that 23 range, it was a little bit more viable to be able to get CD and Tony if you wanted to. Now you're going to have to get lucky and have him drop, or you're going to have to reach for CD, something like that, and then reach for Pollard. To me, a guy that usually I end up trying to get to with my stacks and just in general as a one-off is Jahmyr Gibbs. He, 2 months ago, he was at 38 ADP. He's moved up to 31. I think it's warranted. I think we realize now he's going to get involved. Him and David Montgomery. David Montgomery, I'm interested in him as well. He's at around pick 86. He hasn't really moved much over the summer. But these guys can be on the field at the same time. And they probably will. Yeah. Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be using the pass game a lot, just like Sam Laporta is. So, Jahmyr Gibbs, like getting, as a run back, Gibbs and Montgomery. It sounds strange. It's a weird thing to do, but like you're capturing pass catching ability and you're capturing goal line opportunity from that run back. So anyways, Brandon Cooks is at 82. Like I said, Montgomery's 86. So Dak Prescott in that 96 range. You're telling me that you haven't got to a lot of him. He's dropped by 8 ADP over the summer for whatever reason. Maybe that's just to kind of correct with the stacks, kind of where some of these picks are going. But you're telling me you haven't got to a lot of him. Is there any other reason? Is that a conscious thing, or you just haven't been able to land on him when you want to?
I'm trying to make more concerted effort not to reach for quarterbacks, especially with how many guys that we have in the back end. I still like getting a little bit of exposure to Geno Smith, Jared Goff. Like these guys, you're all getting a little bit later on. And I don't know if there's necessarily as much risk. And in that Dak Prescott range, where you got Cortland Sutton, you got Eli Moore, you got Quentin Johnson. I think he's moved up a little bit, but there's just a lot more opportunity cost associated with taking somebody there. Now, I don't know, like maybe I'm a little bit crazy just because I have so many. I still have, I have 17% Brandon Cooks, I have 18% Michael Gallup, and 12 to 15% CD Lamb. So maybe I do need to get a little bit more exposure to Dak Prescott. But even if Dak gets injured, like a Cooper Rush or whoever the fuck ends up playing quarterback, I still is going to be able to put up some fantasy points with some of these guys, right? Like this is a pretty well-rounded offense. I think of course they're better with Dak Prescott in, but if they think about the Niners, like if you got the right offensive coordinator and you kind of got an efficient quarterback, sometimes you have enough talent around them to put up some decent fantasy numbers. So Dak's really just not the guy that I'm getting to. I think Jahmyr Gibbs is a fun guy to stack with CeeDee Lamb, kind of like you were talking about. But by the time I get to this Brandon Cooks range, I'm expecting Brandon Cooks to be my wide receiver 5 or 6. So like I'm expecting him, like if he has 800 yards and 4.5 touchdowns, 5 touchdowns on the season, that's probably 2 games where he had 120 and 2, right? So like that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for that spike week production, and I think that he's perfect for that, especially if you're getting him at wide receiver 5, wide receiver 6, and that's another reason why I'm kind of not on Dak Prescott in that range, right? Because like I want some of these wide receivers are still core wide receivers you can build around in that range, and you can capture them for the spike week upside. And then look, man, Jared Goff, like he's in that weird range of 117, right? Like, so there's not a bunch of people that I like there. There's not a whole bunch of wide receivers that I like. There's a couple running backs. You got Antonio Gibson, Brian Robinson, and those guys are all moving up. Khalil Herbert, right? Like I like getting a little bit of exposure to those guys, but Jared Goff kind of fits in this range a little bit more seamlessly. So you can grab Jared Goff, and then maybe if you ended up with one of those 12, 13, around 1-2, the 1-2 turn picks, maybe you're able to grab JMO and Jared Goff here
back to back. Yeah. And they'd have to fall a little bit most likely because I think you'd be in the mid 20s picking there. But look, if you can't get to JMO and you want to get Jared Goff, you could turn right back around most likely and grab Laporta in that next round. Or the round after that, wherever he's at. Michael Gallup's at 143. I like Michael Gallup a lot as a third wide receiver. I mean, he's solid, and in a offense, he's going to have a lot of volume, man. Like he's going to have a lot of targets. And look, to be honest, there's probably going to be some injuries, with this Dallas team. It's going to happen. So a guy like Gallup may end up getting some extra playing time because CeeDee Lamb misses 2 games here. Maybe Brandon Cooks misses 2 games here. Brandon Cooks is not 22 years old anymore. He's, I don't think how old is he? Is he hit 30 yet? It seems like he should be 30, but maybe he's like 28 or something. I don't know. I guess my point is here, I really do
29.
He's 29. I do like Michael Gallup at this 143 pick range. So if you look at Jake Ferguson, his stock is rising a bit now that we kind of know that he's kind of the guy. I mean, I always thought he was, and he was going at pick 213. I was getting him in round 19 or 20 earlier in the summer, and you could still get him. He'll still fall down past that point. So it's really nice to add some stacking options to your stacks or just as one-offs. Ferguson seems to be a pretty good late tight end pick. What I've been finding myself doing a lot is sometimes I'm just punting at tight end. I'm getting to like around 11 or 12, and I'm just grabbing up Laporta. I'm grabbing up Freiermuth, then Laporta. Things. And then getting a dude in the last round as my three tight end builds. But now we got to talk about we got to talk about Schoonmaker. We got to talk about Hendershot. Look, if you're drafting like a 20 max, you probably shouldn't be grabbing these guys. But I at the end of the day, I'm going to probably draft 300 drafts over the summer. So I'm going to have some exposure to these guys. Have you gotten to any Hendershot or Schoonmaker? Because earlier in the summer, I was getting to more Schoonmaker than I have been recently.
I think I have one with Ferguson and maybe 1 or 2 with Schoonmaker. Again, I'm not too crazy about getting to them. I do have a little bit just because so Luke Schoonmaker is really interesting to me. Yeah, if he's honestly the NFL non-football injury list, right, might be beneficial to people taking him in the round 20 because if he doesn't start the first half of the season, maybe he does come out in Peyton Hendershot and Jake Ferguson just aren't NFL tight ends, starting caliber tight ends, and they decide to give Luke that run later on in kind of the weeks that matter for us, right?
Yeah,
So I
right.
think that he's a fine guy to be taking in that. If you're looking just to kind of shore up your season or your weeks 1 through 14, just get as many points, then I don't mind taking Hendershot or Ferguson, assuming they'll get their early season work. But I think like when you're trying to pick people in the 19 to 20 range, you're not looking for week to week depth, right? You're looking for spike week. So Luke Shoemaker is a guy that I think could have a 2 touchdown performance maybe once. Like it's the only performance he has this season. It's 2 touchdowns in week 16 and advances you to the week 17.
Yeah.
So those are the kinds of things that I'm considering. But even then, like I'm going to throw this out there. Like Brock Wright, like what if Laporta does sprain his ankle at some point? We saw Brock Wright get some decent run last year.
Yeah.
So like I think that he might even be a little bit more valuable than some of these other guys. Again, this range is just so weird because like as we go through these other teams, you're going to see that there's some pretty decent value that's still available. Like again, Michael Wilson's just the guy that I like the drum I like to beat because he's going to probably end up being wide receiver 2, and he's still going at 228 or whatever. So
yeah,
man, if you like Hendershot and Shoemaker, I think you can take some flyers on them, but 150 max only.
Yeah, and look, the guy we didn't mention in narratives was Denzel Mims was traded from the Jets. He was a higher round draft pick for the Jets. He never fit in. They went out and traded for him specifically. They could have went out and signed some dudes off the street. They wanted him. To me, that means maybe they're going to give him a shot to get some playing time while Jameson Williams is out. So we don't have him here, Denzel Mims, but I think he's going in that 228, 229 range, kind of that default, like he's getting drafted, he's not getting drafted range. So look, as like a last piece to your Detroit stacks, I don't mind grabbing one, random lineup with Denzel Mims. All right, anything else to talk about, or do you want to jump over to your lineups here?
Yeah, I think we're good here.
All right, so talk to me about this one here. This is the first one. You got a Jamar Chase, Tony Pollard, T. Higgins build. That's pretty nice. With Goff in the 10th round, Sam Howell, and then you got a Colt McCoy as your third quarterback. Jameson Williams there. Let's see. What do you got? You got a 2. Oh, interesting. This is cool. Detroit, you got 2 teammates with Goff with 4 running back. Talk to me about this.
Yeah, man. So first off, elephant in the room. I panicked. I needed a backup quarterback, so I took Sam Howell. If you see that he's my naked, just random fucking quarterback there.
It happens.
Yeah, hey man, I needed somebody. Colt McCoy will do me fine there. Notice the Michael Wilson plug once more. So I wanted to choose this lineup just because I think I may have overdone it a little bit here. We got Tony Pollard, Michael Gallup, which I think is fine. I just don't know I needed to throw in Deuce Vaughn. That could kill me here, especially with the Chase Brown stack there. I took all 3 rookie. Goddamn, 4. Yeah. Roshan, Jerome, Chase, and Deuce. I must have drafted this after watching someone's show or something. But look, man, I love Jared Goff, and I like having the options to run it back. Dallas, if Brandon Cooks, he played 13 games last season. CeeDee Lamb, I mean, he played all 17. If Michael Gallup can fill in for 2 or 3 of those games that Brandon Cooks misses, I really think that he's a fine play. And I don't know, man. This isn't too terrible. I guess I have some depth. It just really relies on Tony Pollard and Aaron Jones holding down the running back position for me.
And look, you got Hawkinson and Laporta as you got a 2 tight end build here, which I'm totally fine with when you have an elite tight end like that in the first 4 rounds. Like sometimes I just get to 2 tight end builds. It just happens, especially with a guy like Laporta. Yes, there are some question marks, but he's a wide receiver. I mean, let's just be real here, All right, let's get to this other lineup you got. So this is a JJ Olave, Tony Pollard with a Dak Prescott. Let's see, what do you got? You got a 3-1 here. Who do you got as your run back for Detroit? Laporta. Yep, I like it. That's interesting. I've never seen this punt tight end. Maybe because I don't do any four tight ends. I've never seen that punt tight end designation. That's pretty interesting. You got Jake Ferguson there in the 18th round. What were your thoughts on this one, man?
God damn, another Chase Brown lineup here. Maybe I need to start spreading out some of these running back options on the back end. But look, man, I think this is interesting. I could have instead of having 4 tight ends, I could have probably taken Marvin Jones Jr. or even like a guy like Khalif Raymond if I was interested in running it back.
Yeah.
But I was really trying to do something pretty specific here. I think I'm pretty set at a wide receiver in general. Just having Justin Jefferson and Chris Olave. And,
Yeah.
I mean, even Godwin, Evans, Addison, right? That should be fine.
Yeah.
So, and then Sam Laporta, he's my tight end 1. So, like, it's going to be interesting. I think that those are enough tight ends to carry me through the regular season. But if he has a breakout year, like that Week 17 matchup could be really interesting, you know? So,
yeah, absolutely.
I don't know. I thought it was a unique kind of interesting build here.
All right, so final thoughts here, Ellie. This is going to be kind of a chalky sort of build, like at least when you're drafting, like getting to this matchup is ideal because of the weather conditions. Remember, Week 17, that's December 31st. It might get pretty nasty out there. So being in a dome is a huge, you have the Vikings matchup too. So final thoughts on this, man, like going forward, knowing what we know now with the depth charts for Dallas, knowing that Deuce Vaughn is maybe not going to get as much play time as maybe we hoped. What are you doing now for the last like 3 or 4 weeks that we're able to draft?
Yeah, man, I think I'll balance out a little bit of my Deuce Vaughn exposure with some Malik Davis. I think that's kind of where we're going to go there. Also, like, I don't think we need to overreact to some of the depth charts. We're going to see a lot of people that, are getting run just to see if they need to be on the roster anymore, right? Deuce Vaughn's probably going to be a practice squad guy either way. If he doesn't make the final 53-man roster, 54, whatever it comes out to. So, just don't overcommit to anybody, especially in those late rounds. I know I was tooting Michael Wilson's horn here, but like, it rotates some of your exposure on the back end. We're still a month out and we don't know what's going to happen to some of these guys.
Yeah. Speaking of Michael Wilson, our next show, we're going to do Eagles and Cardinals. We did get a depth chart from the Cardinals. I have been very low as a Cardinals fan. I see where this is going. Somebody's got to score some points though, so you can get a lot of these Cardinals dudes for cheap. So that's our next show. Clearly, obviously, AJ Brown, Jalen Hurts, stacks in that first two picks is open. So we'll talk about that obviously when that show comes out. When are we gonna do that? You want to do that tomorrow night, or I don't know? We'll figure that out. Just keep an eye out for that. If you haven't seen our way too early breakdown for the showdown slate for Detroit and KC, check that out and throw us a like on this video. Help us get to let's go 20 likes on this video. We appreciate you guys. We'll see you next time.